So I'm curious from you, before we move into spoilers, what's your letter grade for this film?
A.
Okay.
Straight
and I'm
A.
going to be right there with you. Solid A.
Yep. There's a couple of things that limit it from being an A plus, but a solid A, 100%. Everyone's got to go watch it, but an A is for me.
Okay. So there you have it, folks. We got letter grades from two of the lads. We're going to move into spoilers right now. All right. So let's start with your big comeback.
Baby. Oh, you mean the negative emotion? I simply, before I wanted to get into spoilers, negative meaning I was crying like a fucking baby for about 30 minutes of that movie. Not at one chunk, but it just got me in the jellies exactly where it was meant to get me in the jellies. If you're an animal lover, you cannot watch this movie without blubbering like a baby, like I said. And that's what I meant by the negative emotion. I don't want to say anything. But dude, it managed to tug on the heartstrings, obviously with the choice of music and the actual storyline too. I don't have many major issues with it at all as a whole. I think maybe how Adam Warlock's story journey was handled was a little bumpy and not quite seen through well enough, but considering how much they were trying, or James Gunn was trying to squeeze in an already hefty runtime. What was it? Close to 2.5 hours? It felt. It didn't feel that long, but I knew it was 2.5 hours roughly. Yeah. And he had a lot of stuff to squeeze in there. And so maybe there's a couple of pacing things in there, but they're so small, such squibbles, with the whole character storylines, that maybe Adam Warlock's was the one that wasn't quite fulfilled. But other than that, I just felt absolutely fantastic in this film. You're going to go through segment by segment or overall, but yeah, I feel 100% happy that it was done as I wanted it to be. And the reason why, the reason why, it got the A as score as well is because finally we've got a Marvel film this year, and you said it yourself, since Spider-Man, that actually feels like we're back on track again. So there's that bittersweet, but we're not going to get another one, are we? Because right. James Gunn's going somewhere else. He's the only one so far that's managed to show us again that Marvel hasn't completely lost the plot with this. And the last thing I'll say before I hand over, Jonesy, the bad guy in this movie, we could have had him as the bad guy for the whole freaking next saga, because, if it had been padded out, if it wasn't, he was freaking awesome. He's not, he's a god, right? And has control over other planets. So there is a far-reaching control that he has. And he played him so well. Forgive me, guys, I don't know the actor's name, can't remember the actor's name, but this bad guy, this evil guy, fuck evil, and brilliantly played. I would have gladly had him over Kang the Conqueror's current multiverse thing, timeline shit stuff that's bugging the hell out of me. So anyway,
you just have a bias. You just have a bias against the multiverse, right? So that's part of it. You don't like all those, yeah. So I'm going to mess up his name.
Ant-Man, was Kang really that imposing in Ant-Man and stuff? Compared to this one, it wasn't.
But so the thing is, he started out that way, and it was the script, I think, that let him down rather than the characterization himself. In Quantumania, I agree with you. So the actor's name is Chukwudi Iwuji, and you'll know him from the Peacemaker series. And what I read leading up to this was it was actually his role from Peacemaker that had James Gunn cast him in this. So that is, that's the connective tissue there.
Brilliant.
And, I'll say this, I'll echo a lot of the same stuff, and you hit on a lot of the same things I was going to ask you about. Marvel movies typically get a lot of flack for their villains, and that was an earlier problem, again talking about the 15th anniversary of the MCU, but I thought that he was really good. And what I liked about him was I liked that his motivation was very obvious. He wasn't somebody that wanted to take over the world. It wasn't this, it wasn't that. It was just a very good picture of a person who had a god complex, was very jealous of his creation. Like, at every turn, I felt like I could understand his motivations, even if I didn't necessarily agree with him. And I thought that he was played very well. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. His
And then,
motivations was something I could get my teeth into, even like you said, even if I couldn't agree with it, I could see where they were coming from. They weren't just wants to conquer the universe or crush anything. So yeah. Sorry, Jonesy, go ahead.
yeah. No, and so the other thing I'll say is I really, really liked. So I was surprised when I read. So Cam wrote an article for LRM where he talked about the fact that James Gunn had initially thought about this as being a Rocket and Groot spinoff. I am so glad that we got this Rocket story within the Guardians
Yes.
mold, and I think that really enhanced this. Getting to see Peter's reaction to Groot's story, getting to see Gamora's reaction to, I'm sorry, not Groot, to Rocket's story, and getting to see all of these characters view this trauma that happened to Rocket and just have a reaction to it. And that allowed the audience to feel that as well. I don't know how he would have done that if it had just been Groot. It probably wouldn't have just been Groot. But I loved what we ended up getting. And so there's a line where they talked about, like, why wouldn't you have told us this? And it's like, this is absolutely horrific. I just loved getting to see this from that perspective. I thought he played it wonderfully.
Yeah, and that what was again one of the many ways that it's such a great emotional journey, even with the action stuff that's going on, was the way that as the movie was unfolding, what was happening to Rocket, or what happened to Rocket, seeing all those reactions, but also then how those reactions then help them to interact together and bond together, or not, as the case may be. I think this is the most. This movie is most about family more than any other, definitely more than the Fast and Furious films. Like, they keep harping on about it being about family. This film is definitely about family.
Still a Vin Diesel movie.
To the very end, the final scene. Yeah, even the very final end credits scene stuff. It's very well done how that was padded out. And I can only think, Jonesy, that it may have started as a Groot and Rocket side journey, but I think as it developed, when he brought the Guardians in, and it's always been about the little family, I think that idea then got fleshed out. So I don't think it would have been that same, obviously not the same story, but I think the family connections and how they reacted was because he'd brought it into a Guardians film and not a spin-off. I think that led to one or the other.
What was so you said you were crying throughout the course of this movie. What was like your number one tearjerker moment?
Well, you mean number one or the first one?
Pick one. Tell me. You tell me.
It would have to be when, think about it, even though it's still fairly fresh in my mind, because I did feel like I spent at least 30 minutes either crying or drying the tears. It was when Rocket escaped from the cage the first time. Mm-hmm. That whole post scene, I mean, I had tears in my eyes when I saw the animals that were being experimented on. I know into spoilers, but experimented on. But I think it's the way they managed to get so much emotion in an animated raccoon's face, and of course the music always helps, right? The composer was very clever, but it had to be that. It was that, that first scene when he escapes and the first friend, the otter, when she dies. I just couldn't do it anymore. And then later on, when they kept doing that, I wasn't quite as many tears as when Peter was in space. I couldn't help but smile when the facial thing happened. But yeah, it's the escape. When Rocket escapes and loses his first family, his first friends, that got me hard.
Okay.
What about you?
I have a hard time crying in movies. It's weird. The one that really got to me was the scene between Kraglin and Yondu. And there's a moment where and I think part of it is because it's a callback to the second one. I didn't really like the second one, but there's a scene in there where Yondu is talking to Peter and he's talking about the way that he uses the arrow is because he uses his heart, not his head. And so that line is when he's talking to him, because that was about how he was fighting his dad. And so in this, Kraglin up finally understanding how to use that device and him getting his hero moment. I really enjoyed that scene and getting to see Yondu again. Because I just said to someone about daddies versus fathers, and I referenced that scene. So him coming back for that scene made it that much better. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So at the end of this film, we've got a new Guardian team. We've got a team of Kraglin, Groot, Phyla-Vell, Cosmo, the fuzzy little creature Blurp, and Adam Warlock. So Zoe Saldana and Dave Bautista have been pretty vocal about being done with this series. It is possible that Chris Pratt is going to come back in a solo Star-Lord film. Which of those films would you want to see? Keep in mind, neither is going to be directed by James Gunn. So we've got a solo Star-Lord film or a Volume 4 with this team.
Oh, well, now that's. I don't think it would be Volume 4. I think it would be something different. I think if they did that, they'd make the same screw up.
Don't quibble about the name.
Oh, in that case,
you get a film with this team. Call it whatever you like.
Whatever you want.
And then you get a solo Star-Lord film. Which one would you want?
If they are my two options, Jonesy, I'll have a solo Star-Lord.
Really? Tell me why.
Yes, sir. Well, because although that final scene was a fun scene with the new Guardians, I am not that connected with Adam Warlock, and here's how I'm not connected with it, or the young girl that was with them that you just said. I have no idea who they are at the moment. So you just put me on the spot a little bit. I know Star-Lord. I would feel that him and Chris Pratt's charisma would, as long as again, it's not James Gunn directing or writing, but I would feel more comfortable and confident that would be a more enjoyable time at the cinema rather than the other group that I at the moment don't have much connection with, except Cosmo.
Okay.
Because she is a good dog. She's a good dog.
Bad dog.
You take it back. I am not bad dog. I'm a good dog.
I love that scene.
That multiple scene, unlike Screaming Goats, I could have had that scene multiple times and still found it funny because it was done in a different way each time, right? When they're playing cards and the rest of the card people are like, oh, for God's sake, just tell her she's a good dog so we can get over it. So it's the same joke played, 5 or 6 times maybe throughout the movie. And like I said, unlike Screaming Goats, it was funny each time, not just the first 2 times.
Okay.
With a little reference to that shit that we saw this year.
I have a hard time with the same answer. I don't know that I would give the same answer, but I'm a little torn. And part of it is because Star-Lord's most controversial moment for me, and it's a shame Nick isn't on here because I was going to needle him. For years, we've been talking about that scene in Infinity War where Star-Lord tries to punch Thanos rather than letting the plan go through. I'm like, that shit doesn't make any sense. And he's like, that makes sense. I'm like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. So James Gunn last week said that's not how I would have written the character. And so now we're having this discussion about what are we going to get if we get a new version of this character written and directed by someone else. And even Chris Pratt said it would be weird, right? But he would do it. So I don't know.
But the same thing for the group, right? The same thing for the other
That's
Guardians.
Right.
It might be a different rocket, a different Groot.
Because it is very obvious that it is the secret sauce for these films is James Gunn.
100%. Yeah.
Like he's just so good at writing these characters.
Yep. I mean, so when we had the little banner come up at the end of the movie that said Star-Lord, the amazing Star-Lord or whatever it was will return.
Legendary.
It was something, wasn't it? Like he'd written it himself. Was okay. Well, I'm just going to assume, right or wrongly, that he was going to come back, but as Star-Lord in movies from Marvel, so he's going to be involved in, because he's now on Earth, right? So he's as it stands, he's leaving on Earth. So anything that happens on Earth, Star-Lord is someone that could be called upon or could bring back into action, right? So I just saw that as okay, we're going to see Star-Lord again. I don't know if the cameo is the right word, but as a character in another movie, another Marvel movie, not his own movie. I wasn't thinking a solo movie. That's why I said out of the 2 options you gave me, that's the one I'd go with. But it's neither of those I think are what are going to happen. But what do I know?
Okay. I think for sure we'll probably see him again in like whatever ends up being the next Avengers film and potentially a Secret Wars film. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. I think the last thing there are two last things I would say about this film. One, I'm glad that they brought back Dancing Root. It was fun to see him as an adult dancing.
Yeah.
And then I really just love that this film had a lot to say about loss and trauma and love, and did such a good job with a send-off for these characters, with Drax and Mantis and all of them. Like it is apparent that these characters are written with love.
Yep.
Like, and it shows.
And they got. I feel they got they deserved amount of screen time. They deserved amount of development, etc. And have that. And I think all of them deserved it. You know, if the only small criticism that I think of is the Adam Warlock thing, maybe. But also, there's maybe just one too many fake outs as far as someone's going to die kind of thing. But you know what? I thoroughly enjoyed the action sequences, I think, because I don't remember thinking any were shit, but I couldn't necessarily describe many of them to you right now other than their location. And I think that's one of the great things about this film. What I was going to say is that what's sitting with me is how I felt emotionally about the whole journey with, like you just said, the love, the loss, the family, the emotional roller coaster. And I think that's a credit to the film, where it's not just, oh, well, it was a good action film. It probably was. I don't remember it as being that. That's all I'm saying, is that I remember it for the emotions it gave me. And so that's a credit to everyone on screen and obviously a majority of people behind the camera too. It was
so
a great experience.
For me, they stuck out to me because they were so much fun. So when they went into when fought Nathan Fillion and Mantis was going nuts on those guys, like that was a lot of fun.
The corridor scene. We had a corridor scene.
Corridor scene. That was fantastic. Like almost like it wasn't Old Boy, but like every time there's a corridor fight, I'm like Old Boy. That was a fantastic fight scene. And then when they beat the shit out of the High Evolutionary, and then you get to see the mask come off.
Yeah.
But
it also gives. It's also one of the very clever, because when Rocket did that to his face, you're like, well, how much damage did he do? I mean, he's got those sharp little claws as a raccoon, and then I was not expecting to see that because we didn't see it at the time, and I thought, oh, they just cut that out because they're trying to keep a PG-13, 15 rating or whatever it was. And then when we did it, I thought, oh, Rocket, you had your moment earlier, but.
Well, what I loved about that scene was as they're pulling it off, Rocket was like, it's a mask. Like he knew. He's like, no, I fucked this guy up. Like I know this isn't his face.
Like that,
he does. So I really enjoyed this film. Highly recommend it, and I'll probably watch this multiple times.
Me too.
I just watched the first one again. Yeah,
I watched the first one again.
I'm gonna go back and watch. Yeah, this is good.
And I know I'm gonna cry again too, because it's just awesome. So yeah, I agree, Jonesy. Before we flog it to death, I think we both love this movie for very much the same reasons. And if anyone is on the fence about it, get off that fence. Go and watch this film. Yeah, don't be. Go watch this film.